I have set up a kind of basic but functional circuit here for us. I have two buttons. I'm going to call this one on the left the start button and this one on the right the stop button. And I have an LED hooked up here. All of them have all of their needed connections. So I'll zoom in on that a little bit. The LED has a 330 resistor going to ground, and the other one is going to pin 6. And I picked that one because it could be either digital or analog, depending on what I want to do with that light. Each button is set up with 3 connections, right? One connection is going to power. The other leg is going 2 places. It's going to the board. And in this case, I chose a digital only pin because it doesn't matter. You can certainly do it on one of those, but maybe I want to save those for later, something else. These only need a digital pin, so that's what I chose. And then they have one of the 10K resistors that's going on that same leg and out to ground. Okay, so that's my circuit setup. 2 buttons, 1 LED. If we look over in the code section here on the right, I've made sure to add a header at the top, and I don't have many comments in here yet, but I will. For now, I just set up the variables. So my start button, where it's connected to pin 12, my stop button is connected to pin 4, and my LED pin is number 6. And then I have input all of those in my setup section. And I have set up to use the serial monitor. I don't really know that I'll need to use the serial monitor, but gosh, I use that thing a lot. So usually if I'm starting a new project, I go ahead and include that in there in case I need it. Okay, so what are we going to do with this program? The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of make sure everything is working together. So I'm going to read start button to turn on the light and read stop button to turn off the light. Okay, so we're just going to make sure we know how to do those things. So if, this is a conditional statement, the thing I'm going to check goes in parentheses, the thing I'm going to do goes inside the brackets. So the thing I'm going to check is I want to check what's happening on the start button. So that's a digital read, because it's just on or off, because it's a button, and read, because I'm taking in information. And the start button, that's the one that I'm checking. And I want to see if it is high, because high means that it is being pressed, the way I have it set up. Okay, and I use the 2 equal signs. This has been a problem for a couple of people. 1 equal sign is when you want to assign something to be true, like up here in the setup section, for example. I'm saying LED pin, you are the number 6. 2 equal signs down here, that's checking to see if something is true. So I'm not telling digital read start button that it is high. I'm saying, could you see if these 2 things are the same? It's more like a balance. We're checking to see if it's true. Okay, but if it's true, what do I want to have happen? I'm going to digital write to the LED pin and turn it on. So on high. Okay. And then down here, I'm going to have an else if, and whatever I am checking for goes inside the brackets. And now I don't like that because I want it to be after the comment. Okay, so the thing I'm checking for goes inside the parentheses. The thing I'm doing goes inside the brackets. So the thing I'm checking for in this case is if the stop button has been pressed, which would mean it is now high. I have the right number of parentheses. I think that looks good. And if it is, I am going to turn off the light. So is this the program I want in the long term? Not necessarily, but it is a really good like first step. It's going to tell me whether everything is hooked up correctly and kind of get the structure begun. So we'll see how it came out. I'm going to hit start simulation. Okay, so nothing is on right now. If I press the stop button, nothing happens. Okay, that's good. If I press the start button, aha, my light turns on. And if I keep pressing the start button, nothing new happens because my light is already on. And now if I hit the stop button, my light turns off. Excellent, I have reinvented the light switch. Okay, so if I hit the start button, light turns on, stop button, it turns off. This is good news. This means everything is wired and reading correctly. All right, but maybe now I want something a little more complex. Maybe I want my start button to control something that's going to happen over and over again. And my stop button, I want to reset that. So this could be kind of like resetting an alarm. This could be the resetting of a game or a level. This could be taking a new input in your musical instrument. This could be the pause maybe, or the reset on your stopwatch. There's a lot of different ways to use the same idea that we're working on now. All right, so let's take a look. I'm not going to do this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. Goodbye, on off switch. So instead, I'm going to think about what I want to happen. I want my start button to turn on a flashing LED. Okay, and then I want that to keep going. And I want my stop button to turn it off, to turn off the LED. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to start out checking that start button, okay? If thing that I'm checking goes in the parentheses, digital read on my start button, that's high, then I'm going to set flashing to true. And I'm gonna do some more setup for that in just a second. So flashing doesn't exist yet. What is that? It is gonna be a variable, and I'm gonna set it up here. Variable to hold. I'm gonna call it current action. Okay, and flashing, I'm gonna start it out as false. Now, bool here, boolean, that means true or false value. I could make this an integer too and go between 0 and 1, or I could make it an integer and go between 0 and 50. Maybe I have 50 different actions that I want to be able to kind of accommodate and change between. Any of those would be fine. But you haven't seen this yet, maybe, so I'm going to go ahead and use it so you can see it in action. But you could use an integer just fine. Okay, so right down here, to begin with, it starts as false because I don't want to start my program with the light flashing. Once I hit that start button, I want flashing to be true, and then I am going to start a loop, like a loop within my loop, right? Because my main program is a loop. It's just something that repeats over and over again. But within that main program, I'm now going to set up a new loop. This one is going to be a while loop, while flashing. So kind of like an if statement, it's going to check whatever is in the parentheses here for true or false. So when the program first starts, this loop would not happen because flashing starts out as false. But once I hit the uh, start button, flashing becomes true. So right here becomes true. So now it will do whatever is inside its brackets. And so what is that going to be? So I'm going to digital write the LED pin high, and then maybe I'll delay. I want to flash this pretty fast, so we'll try like 100 milliseconds. Okay, now I could certainly keep going, but it is a really good idea to stop and test the pieces of your program. So right now, this program should do nothing right away. And then once I hit the start button, it should flash this LED. Let's go see if that part works. Right away, nothing is happening. When I hit the start button, aha, our LED starts flashing. Bravo, that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, this is good news. I'm gonna hit stop. So far, so good. Actually, I'm gonna hit start again. So the start button starts the flashing. Pressing the start button again doesn't do really anything. Pressing the stop button also does nothing. Okay, so far I can start the flashing, but I can't stop it. So how will I go about using the stop button to interrupt this flashing? So I left this comment, stop button to turn off the LED inside the while loop on purpose. So once I've started that flashing signal, I'm going to also start checking the stop button in the same way that I checked the start button. So if digital read stop button is high, what do I want to happen? Well, I want flashing to go back to being false. All right, so flashing equals false. What does that all mean? That means that when I hit the start button, flashing becomes true. I'm going to enter this while loop because flashing is true. I'm going to turn the LED on, delay, off, delay, and then I'm going to check and see if the stop button has been pressed. If it has, I'm going to set flashing to false. So now when I go back up to the top of the loop, flashing is now false. So I'm not going to do this anymore. Okay? So while, I'll add a comment here, if in flashing state, uh, flash the light. There we go. So that is what that while loop is doing. So that flashing variable is keeping track of whether we want that to be happening right now or not. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then I'm going to add another line. All right, so let's first make sure, okay, stop button does nothing right now, good. Start button starts the flashing, good. Okay, more start button, no real change. Stop button stops the flashing. Ah, it's a beautiful thing. All right, I'm going to stop the simulation. There is another line that I would like to add, actually a couple. So right here, when we read, not right there, when we read the start button, I want to show that the state of flashing has changed. So I'm going to use the serial print so that we can see what's going on. And I'm going to do that down here where I change it back. Is this needed for the program to run? No, but especially because this is a demo, it might be helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and add it. I'm going to start the simulation again. I'm going to open up our serial monitor. And oh, that's old. Okay, so I'm going to get ready. I'm going to hit the start button. And you can see that flashing is true or 1, right? Positive, true, high, all of those are 1. Okay, and when I hit the stop button, it goes back to 0. When I hit the start button again, start. When I hit the stop button, we stop. Pretty good. So one thing that I want to note here is that if I had a longer delay on this, like maybe a second each, would it still work? And the answer is yes, but it might not work in quite the same way. So if I hit start, you can see that my light is flashing, right? And down here, we can see that flashing right now is true, at 1. But if I hit this button, it didn't change. Click the button, didn't change. Click the button, didn't change. If I hold down the button, there we go, it stopped. And the reason for that is that your program is executing each line one at a time. So it is going to turn on the LED, wait for 1 second, turn off the LED, wait for 1 second, and then check the button. So if you clicked the button in here, say halfway through this first second, it's not looking right now, okay? And that's just the way Arduinos are. So I need you to be okay with that and embrace it. It is executing 1 line at a time in order. So if you are hoping that the button will interrupt what's happening up here, that's not the way it's going to work. So that's why a lot of times we have, oh, I gotta stop simulation. We have kind of a shorter period maybe, and then, or you need to check the button more often. Okay, so that's something that can sometimes trip people up. Now, if you're doing a stopwatch and you're having it update once every second, and I need to hold down the bottom, down a button until the end of that 1 second, that's fine. We're gonna make that work. You just might want to include that in your code somewhere, like make sure to hold the button down for 1 second as a note to your user. Okay, I think that was everything I really wanted to cover here. So that's how to use a value like a Boolean, though it could be an integer. This would work just fine if this was an integer and I wanted to switch between 5 different actions. This would also work with something other than a button, right? This could be anything, a photo resistor, a temperature sensor. It would just change what we're checking right here in our if statement. And it could control something different. It doesn't have to control a flashing light. Maybe it's going to control a motor or what's showing up on the screen or anything like that. All of those possibilities, this kind of overall structure would work for that. So this is a really helpful kind of code bit that might assist you in making your own projects.